I got these animals to breakfast, and about tomorrow, I'll go to the sale barn. I was taking a look at these local sale barns, and I was looking to see if maybe I could find myself a good set of number 1 type calves somewhere, number 1.5 type calves somewhere. And I'll still look around for them. Tomorrow I will go to the sale barn, and I will just see what I can get myself. I'll buy myself 2 or 3 cattle, probably 2 or 3 calves. If I'm very fortunate, I'll buy 3 or 4 calves. And so with everything that I got going on right now, I figured that I would review what I've been talking about over the last couple of days, okay? So the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis, the money that I have in the animals, and then the money that I have made but I have not paid myself, right? This whole thing about all this going on, so I figured I would okay, so let's go through all this, and I'll ask it in the form of a question. And I'll ask it in the form of a question. So everything that I discussed, right? Let's say that I'm selling let's say that Farmer Howard is in a situation right now where his lightest animals are averaging about 400 pounds, and his heaviest animals are averaging about 700 pounds, and he realistically anticipates that he will liquidate all of these animals over the next 4 months. And he has 28 animals, and he realistically anticipates that these animals will hit the scale at about 900 pounds on the average. Because you have to understand that the 700-pound calves, right? The 700-pound calves, this ties back into all of it. The 700-pound calves, if I held on to them for another 4 months, especially with the grass that I got growing in right now and everything, I mean, those animals would be like 1,100-1,200 pounds. And realistically, I can liquidate them at about 900 pounds here in about maybe 2 months. And a lot of these animals are at about the same weight. I have about probably 5 or 6 animals right now that are over 700 pounds. I probably have another 10 animals that are in between 550 and 650. And then I have another about 10, 11 animals that are about in between 350 and 450, and so about 400 pounds. And so when I this ties back into all of it, right? When I liquidate my animals and I take that money that I make, that's the money that I make on a monthly basis, right? That is the money that I make on a monthly basis. And the whole idea with the money that I make on a monthly basis, I don't divide up a proportion of it to pay the bank back. Under what circumstance? I guess this is the time for the first question. So under what circumstance? If I have positive equity in my herd, okay? If I have positive equity in my herd, then I do not consider the money that I make on a monthly basis. I don't consider any of that to be the bank's money. Because if it came down to it, I can pay the bank back at any time, right? Like, if it came down to it, I can pay the bank back at any time, even with my own money, okay? Even if I somehow managed to lose all of the bank's money, I can still pay the bank back, right? So, granted that I have positive equity in my herd, and I really want the positive equity to be about 20%. I don't want it to be a lot lower than 20%, and I don't want it to be a lot lower than 80%. And I don't want the overall leverage on my herd to be over 80%. I don't want it to be significantly lower, and I don't want it to be significantly over 80%. So when I take a look at my balance sheet and I appraise the value of my balance sheet, the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet should be about 80% of the equitable sum. That's about the magic, that's about the spot where I want to be, okay? And the whole reasoning behind that is just in case if something happens and the bank calls me and says you need to pay back all of your loans, they start calling in their loans for whatever reason, right? Bad things happen at times. I don't want to be stuck in a situation where I'm having to be concerned about the money. All right. The whole thing about money is, in terms of a realistic sense, the whole thing about money is as long as you're not concerned about money, that's about all that matters. You don't want to be in a situation where you're lying to yourself, and that's why you're not concerned about money. You don't want to be, leveraged to the eyeballs, and so you're worried about money. The whole thing about money is, at the end of the day, you just don't want to be worried about money. That's what I think. All right. As long as you're not concerned about money, that's the whole, that's about as much money as you need, in all honesty. Okay. As long as that has been achieved, so let me go further into detail with the questioning on the business plan in terms of how do I utilize capital. So those are the three major pools of money, right? I have the money that I make on a monthly basis. I have the money that I've saved in the animals. And then I also have the money that I have made, but I have not paid myself yet. And, one of the very fortunate things about my situation is that, I had about $120,000 put away. I had about $120,000 put away, and I used about 30 grand of it in the last, 2-3 months. And I'm very fortunate that I had that $120,000 put away, because if I did not have that $120,000 put away, if I only had $30,000 put away, I would have had to, take my herd to zero to be able to use the 30 grand, right? And so, even though I used 30 grand, I still have a business that is still operational. I still have a business that is producing me a significant amount of money. Just right now, I'm not going to use any more capital. I'm not going to dip into the equity of my herd anymore to access the money. Realistically, I have about 200 acres of land that I could use today. And so I'm going to farm the 200 acres of land. And when I farm the 200 acres of land, that will expand the size of my herd. That will increase the amount of money that I make. That will also increase the amount of money that I have in the herd, et cetera, et cetera. And, and I will reinvest the money then, because I have plenty of land that I can farm right now. And I'm going to farm the land first, and then I'm going to worry about expanding once I have started generating myself in excess of money, a large excess of money. And it's not even about the money. I'm already generating a lot of money. I'm more concerned about, being as efficient as possible. I want to be efficient. I'm looking to be efficient. Why would I clear up more land when I already have 200 acres that I could farm, right? Why would I clear up more land? It just doesn't make sense, right? I might as well farm the 200 acres first, and then I will go and I will clear up more land. And I realistically anticipate I will get to that point at about maybe about March of next year. And so, but that's the big idea, right? As long as I have positive equity in the herd, that is at least, that is about 20%. I really want that positive equity to be about 20%. Not a lot more, not a lot less, okay? I want it to be about the total leverage to be about 80%, and I want my positive equity to be about 20%. And so, okay, so as long as that has happened, when I go and I sell my 7 animals, let's say I sell 7 animals and I make, let's say I make 20 grand. Let's say I make 20 grand on my 7 animals. That 20 grand, as long as that, the equity has been assessed correctly, and I do have a positive net equity position, I will utilize all $20,000. I will just reinvest all 20 grand. I won't worry about paying the bank back 7 grand or whatever it may be. Maybe about 30% of the, 30% of the money I may have to pay, but I'm not going to worry about paying the bank back. Okay. I will utilize all 20. I'm not saying I'm not going to worry about paying the bank back. I will be paying the bank interest for lending me money. Okay. That's the money that I will pay the bank. Right. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to go and pay off my debt when I have the money. What I will do is I will reinvest the total sum. I will reinvest all 20 grand. And this is also what I mean by when I make that money. I'm not saying that the money is mine and I'm going to go and YOLO it. I'm not saying that the money is mine and I'm going to go and go on a, magical journey. Okay. I'm not saying that I'm going to go and whatever. I'm saying that I will reuse the money for my business. I will put the money back into my business, and I will think about it as my money. So when I invest that 20 grand, that 20 grand now effectively becomes my money in the deal. That 20 grand that I made, that I put back into the deal, I now think about that as my money in the deal. So if I had 100 grand, now I have 120 grand, okay? When that has been done, I will leverage against the earnings, right? And I said, and I was saying that I was going to turn this into a question, ask questions about it, but I'm just going to recap everything. Okay, I'll ask questions here and there if one comes up, but I'm just going to recap everything that I've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 days, all the ideas that I've been discussing over the last 2 or 3 days. Because my business is in the process. My business is, I have been successful in doing what I set out to do, and my business is set to grow very rapidly. My business is set to grow exponentially very rapidly, okay? And so, and I was successful in doing what I set out to do. And so, this is how I will run my business, all right? And so if I have 20 grand, so let's say I sell my 7 animals and I come home with a check for $20,000. That $20,000, I will reinvest all of the money. Once that money is reinvested, I will take a look at the balance sheet and I will determine what is the amount of money that I have in the deal, right? What is the amount of money that I have in the deal? And also, what is the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet, right? It's a finite number. And also, what is the amount of money that I have made on my herd, but I have not paid myself yet? All right, so I will add up all the, I will take these numbers and I will leverage against my money in the deal. So, and I'm not even going to be leveraging against just my own money. I will have to start leveraging against the total equitable sum of my herd. Okay, because at this point, the amount of money that I'm making is simply becoming so large that if I do not leverage against the equitable evaluation of my herd, I will, 20% of my herd will be like, 20% of my herd will be like 50 grand. And so if I'm leveraged 50%, if I'm leveraged 50%, and I have to, and I'm, so if let's say that I go and I have 60 animals worth of my own money. So I invest all of my money. I have 60 animals, and these 60 animals are entirely my own money. I have stabilized the animals, and the animals are appreciating, and I would reasonably anticipate that the animals appreciate for an XYZ amount of time. During that time period, when I have these stabilized animals and my money has been invested, I will take a look at, up until now, if I was like, I have 60 animals, or not 60, let's say I have 10 animals. Well, if I have 10 animals and I will take a loan, 10 animals, and I will take a loan for 8 animals. And that's effectively how I've been running my business until today. And it was just very easy to keep track of. But instead of 10 animals, if we are talking about 100 animals, because let's say I have 10 animals, okay? Let's say I have 10 animals and I take a loan for 8 animals. That would be 18 animals. And let's say that those 10 animals, by the time I have appreciated the value of those 10 animals, let's say that by the time I have stabilized, let's say that by the time I have stabilized the 10 animals, they are worth 12 animals. They are worth 14 animals, right? That extra 2 to 4 animals worth of equity, it's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, okay? It's almost a negligible sum. And so I just had that there, and and things may happen here and there, and I may need to use the money, right? And so that money, I up until now, that's how I was running my business. And think about it like 10 animals versus 100 animals. If I have 10 animals and I stabilize those 10 animals, and by the time that those 10 animals are stabilized, I would have 12 or 14 animals worth of money, right? And so if I go to the sale barn, or if I go to the bank and I take a loan for another 8 animals, I now have 18 animals, right? I now have 18 animals instead of 10. And when I leveraged against my herd, my 10 animals were worth 12 or 14 animals. But now think about it. Let's say 14 animals. Okay, so I had a net positive equity valuation of about 4 animals. But now think about it like 100 animals. If I have 100 animals and I stabilize those 100 animals, and I go to the bank and I only take a loan for 80, if I only take a loan for 80, I will still have 40 animals worth of positive equity. And that is a pretty substantial amount of money. That 40 animals, if I do not leverage against it, and I just continue to let that 40 animals worth of equity grow, it will grow, even more. It will grow even more. Okay, so that's a very realistic way to look at it. If I was running my business with 10 animals, and by the time I had stabilized my 10 animals, I had 14 animals worth of money, and I went to the bank and I took a loan for 8 animals worth of money, there would be a net positive, or excuse me, the difference between my equity in the loan and the bank's equity in the loan, or in the herd. The difference between my equity in the herd and the bank's equity in the herd would be about 6 animals. But if we're talking about 100 animals, and I have 100 animals worth of money, and I take a loan for 80, the difference in the equity would be 60 animals. All right, that's a lot of money. All right, 6 animals, it's whatever, but 60 animals, I need to leverage against that. Okay, I don't want to be sitting around with, I don't want to be sitting around with, 60, 50% leverage on my herd. Okay, I don't want to be using 50% leverage on my herd. There's no reason to do that. There's no reason to do that. All right, I really want to be at about 80%. Even at 80%, I'm not concerned about the money. I'm not concerned about the money. Even when my balance sheet is leveraged to 80%, I'm not concerned about it. Like, I don't have difficulty sleeping at night, okay? I sleep 8 hours a day. I'm not concerned about it, all right? Realistically, I sleep about 7.5 hours a day. And I'm not like, I don't have difficulty going to sleep at night, okay? I'm not worried about it. If I'm at 80% leverage, even if all of the animals, that the bank lent me money for died, if all of the animals dropped dead instantaneously and then I had to sell my own animals to pay the bank back, I could pay the bank back and still have 20% left over, okay? I'm not worried about it. And so, so that's a very realistic way to look at it. If I was running my business with 10 animals and I was running my business plan, I had my 10 animals and I stabilized those 10 animals. And by the time those 10 animals were stabilized, I had about 14 animals worth of money. And I went to the bank and took a loan for 8 animals because I had 10 animals and I leveraged against my assets. Now I have 18 animals. 8 belongs to the bank. The 10 belong to me. The 10 that I had are worth 14 animals worth of money. So the difference in the equitable evaluation, is 6 animals. And 6 animals is not a lot of money. All right, it's not a lot of money. But if we scale that up to 100, now we're talking about a difference now we're talking about 60 animals. And I really don't want to be in a situation where I have 60 animals worth of net positive equity that's just sitting there. It's not going to do anything. Number one, it's not going to do anything. And so, and I feel completely okay leveraging against it, okay? I feel completely okay leveraging against it. I don't have trouble sleeping at night. I'm not worried about it. I'm not selling my soul to the devil. I'm just running my business as efficiently as I can. That's what I have ultimately deduced, okay? I'm not concerned about it. I'm not like losing sleep over it. I'm not selling my soul to the devil over it. If the bank called me tomorrow and told me, hey, you have to pay all your money back, and all of the animals that the bank lent me money for dropped dead instantaneously, I could just sell my animals and pay the bank back, and I would still have 20% money left over. Okay, I'm not concerned about it. I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm not selling my soul to the devil for money, okay? And so that's the big idea, okay? If I have a net positive equity valuation in the herd of at least 20%, the money that I make on a monthly basis, I consider that to be all my money. Granted that I'm not going to go and YOLO the money. All right, as long as if I put the money back into my business, if I take the money that I make on a monthly basis and I put the money back into my into my business, and I grow my herd with it, and I buy whatever I need for my farm with it, I buy grain with it, then I consider it all to be my own money. I'm not concerned about it, okay? That money, I just consider it all to be mine. And, once that money's reinvested and I have taken a look at what the balance sheet looks like at that point, after the money's invested, I would be looking to leverage against that money as well. All right, and very realistically here, very soon, And another way to look, one way to look at what I got, everything ready to go, right? I got a lot of things ready to go. I got about 400 acres of land now. I have 375 acres of land just about. And I have about 200 acres that I could farm today. And realistically, within about 9 months, I'll have another 200 acres, about another 180 acres that I can farm. 175 acres that I can farm. And so, I got everything squared away. I'm doing very well for myself. My animals look very good. And, yep, but that's the big idea, okay? As long as I have positive equity in the herd, the money that I make on a monthly basis, I reinvest all of that back into my business. I don't worry about paying the bank back their money. I pay the bank interest, okay? I pay the bank's interest. And at the end of the day, the bank doesn't want their money back. All right, the bank wants interest, okay? Banks make money by lending out money, okay? That's how banks make money. And at the end of the day, banks don't want their money back. What banks want is for people to pay interest on their loans, okay? And, the whole thing about it is that, and it's a good deal for me because I can take the money from the bank. And I like, my whole thing about I like doing business with banks because when you do business with people, almost everybody, for whatever reason, almost everybody is an idiot. I don't know why, okay? I don't want to know why, but it's effectively everybody is an idiot. All right? Almost everybody. Effectively, almost everybody. And when you get money involved, it just turns into a massive, I like doing business with the banks because when the banks lend you money and you pay the interest on the loan, that's all that's the deal. And I like that. All right. I like doing business with banks. All right. They lend me money. I pay interest on the loan. The agreement is signed. The agreement is made. I pay interest on the loan. And as long as I pay interest on the loan, then business is good. All right. And so, but that's effectively the big idea. And so, if I bring home, okay. And so let's think about it like 105 animals. So at 105 animals, I'd be selling one set of 15 animals every month. And, because very realistically, I'll be at about 100 animals here within about 4 months. And so let's say 105, I'll be selling 15 animals, right? I'll be selling 15 animals a month and I would be raising them for 7 months. And if I was selling 15 animals a month and I was raising them for 7 months, I can effectively take about a 250-pound calf up to about 850 pounds in those 7 months. And so, something like that. If it takes me an extra month, it won't matter. It's going to make a very small difference in the numbers. It doesn't matter. So let's say that I sell 15 animals and I still have 90 animals left over. And realistically, that would just be looking at my money in the deal, because if I had, if I have 60 animals worth of money and then I have a loan for 45 animals, then that's it. Let's say I sell 15 animals a month and I make whatever. Let's say I make 40 grand. That 40 grand, I would reinvest all of it, and I would be looking to take a loan against it as well. Money is very easy to take a loan against, because if I have a loan, or if I have a check in my hand for 40 grand and I want to take a loan against it, I just take a loan for, and I want to take a loan against 80% of it, then I just take a loan for $32,000, right? I take the money that I have on the check and I multiply it by 0.8. Money is very easy to leverage against. Cattle take a little bit more effort. All right, you do have to consider the local market, consider the type of animals that you have, consider the conditioning of the animals, and then you can get a reasonable appraisal value, and then you can leverage against that. But money is very easy to leverage against, right? Money is very easy to leverage against. If I have a check in my hand for 32 grand, if I have a check in my hand for 40 grand, and I want to take a loan against 80% of that money, I just take a loan for $32,000. It's very easy, right? And so, I'd effectively, and that $32,000. But here's the thing. I would probably want to take a loan against the whole sum, because here's the situation. If I have my money in the deal, and this is also what I've been talking about, if I have my money in the deal, when I have my money in the deal and that money I leverage against it, that increases the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis. That's the reason why I leverage against my money, to increase the amount of money that my business makes on a monthly basis, right? That's the whole point. I'm looking to increase the amount of assets that I'm appreciating at the same time. So I have my money in the deal. I have the bank's leverage in the deal. And then that entire herd is what's making me money, right? And I do understand that I owe the bank money, but I don't worry about paying the bank back their principal, right? I pay interest on the loans, and the principal on the loan, I don't worry about it. As long as I have positive equity in the herd, I don't worry about it, okay? I don't worry about it, granted that I have positive equity in the herd of at least 20%. So if I go and I have 105 animals, and I sell 15 animals, and I still have 90 animals at home, and I say, well, I have $100,000 worth of my own money in the deal. I have a check in my hand for 40 grand. And I realistically anticipate that if I liquidated all 180 of my animals today, I would be able to pay the bank back their money. I would get my 100, or excuse, not 180. Let's start that over again. So I have 105 animals total, right? I have 105 animals total. Well, 100, okay, let's not talk about it in terms of animals. Let's talk about it in terms of money. Because 105 animals would be worth more than 180 grand is a reasonable estimate for, that'd be a little high for what I'd be paying for the 105 animals. But, let's just talk about it in terms of money so that I don't keep switching up the units, and then it ends up confusing me too. So let's say that I have $100,000 in the deal, right? And this $100,000, I appreciate, I stabilize the investment, and I have appreciated it, and I have decided to take a loan. So I take a loan against the 100 grand, and I take a loan for 80 grand. And actually, but I'm going to simplify it even more. Let's not talk about stabilizing assets. Let's not, because in the appreciation value, let's simplify it even more. And this is, let's just simplify it even more. So let's just say I have 100 grand in the deal, okay? Let's say that I have $100,000 in the deal. And so I take a look at it and I realize I have 100 grand. And so I go to the bank and I take a loan for 80 grand. So now I have 180 grand. And this 180 grand, I work on the business. I invest the 180 grand and I work on the business. And I have reasonably determined that, and I'm selling a 15 animal. Let's say I'm making myself $40,000 a month off of the $180,000 worth of capital investment, but the $180,000 is realistically worth about whatever. It's worth about $250,000 or whatever it may be. And so it's worth about 260 grand. So that actually that's the way to look at it. I have $100,000 worth of my own money in the deal. I have $100,000 worth of my own money. I have $80,000 worth of the bank's money. I take that $180,000 and I increase the value of that $180,000 to $260,000. I take a look at that $260,000 and I say, well, I'm going to liquidate a portion of this money and I'm going to put that money in my hand as a check. And I've determined that I will liquidate $40,000 worth of investments and I will put the $40,000 in my hand. That would still leave me with $220,000, right? And I owe the bank 80 grand. So if I sold all of my investments, I could pay the bank back. I would have my $40,000 check in my hand, and I would make all my money back, and I would make the extra 40 grand back. So, I would effectively have, 180 grand. And that 40 grand, not the check in my hand, but the 40 grand that's just sitting there in the investment, that is the unrealized gain of the herd. All right. And so, so that's what I mean by, So that's what the unrealized gain is. All right. So I have 180 grand. 80,000 is the bank's, 100,000 is mine. I take that 180,000 and I increase the value of that $180,000 to $260,000 by investing the money and appreciating the value of the asset. I decide that I'm going to liquidate $40,000 worth of the asset, and I'm going to put that money in my hand. So now I have a $40,000 check in my hand. I have $100,000 that I have in the deal, that I put in the deal by myself, and I owe the bank 80 grand. That leaves $40,000 of net positive equity in the herd, right? That still leaves $40,000 worth of positive equity in the animals. That's the money that I have not paid myself yet. It's just sitting there in the animals. That 40 grand. If I were to liquidate all of my assets, if I were to just sell all of my assets, I could pay the bank back. I would make that 40 grand and I would make that $100,000 back. So effectively, I would now have $180,000. And so that's the most, I guess that's the reasonable way of looking at it. And, I would reasonably anticipate, and, all three of these sums of money increase at the same time. And the amount of money, what I call the pools of money, the three pools of money, right? The three pools of money, they're all getting bigger at the same time, and they will start to overflow. And when they start to overflow, I reasonably believe that I will end up with a fourth pool of money and a fifth pool of money. And the fourth pool of money will be the money that is left in my bank account, just straight cash that is left in my personal account after I've paid for everything and paid for my taxes and everything, okay? That will be money that is sitting in my account. And then the fifth pool of money will be stuff that I have money invested in, things that I have that are not cash, like a house. I will probably end up buying myself a house. And the reason that I will buy myself a bigger house, it doesn't really even, count as a fifth pool of money. But, the reason that I will do that is so that I can, just precondition more cattle at the same time. Okay. I'm really looking for a big house, not a big house. I'm looking for a big piece of land, and I'm looking for a house to be on that piece of land. And I really want a stone floor and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I'm looking to accomplish. Okay. So that's what I call the three pools of money. And realistically, I will end up with about 5 pools of money, because the 3 pools of money will probably start overflowing within about 8 months. All right. But, the pools of money that I currently have are going to be completely full of water and overflowing within 4 months. Within 8 months. And it's going to be a lot of money. All right. And just, and I realistically anticipate that when I look at the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis, the amount of money that I make on a yearly basis will exceed $1 million a year within 7 or 8 months. And I don't think I will have any issues even going up to $2 million a year. I don't think I'll have any issues even doing that. And here's the thing, that's just the money that I make. That's the money that I make a year. That doesn't even include the amount of money that I have, like, in the animals and whatever else, in my other investments. That's just the money that I make. The money that I make on a monthly basis will start to exceed $80,000 a month net take-home pay within about 8 months. All right, the $1 million a year that I bring home, I probably won't even have much difficulty going to 2 million. That's not even including, like, the equity that I have in my animals. That's not even including, whatever, that's not including, my land and my equipment. All right, that's just the money. All right, that's how much money I will be netting myself. All right, I will net myself over $80,000 a month within 8 months. And I know that, and when I talk about these things, right, and I talk about it in terms of a realistic sense, money's not an opinion. Like, even if you take a look at what I'm doing right now, just my equity in the herd will probably go up by over $100,000 in just the next 3 or 4 months. And that's just my money in the deal. that money, if I have $100,000 in the deal, I will realistically have another $80,000 loan that I took on top of that from the bank, and the money that I bring home on a monthly basis will that $100,000 is just going to be sitting there. And that's just the net excess that I will make for myself over like the next 4 months. That's, 75, 100 grand, something like that. 100, 125 grand, something like that. That will just be my equity in the animal. That won't even be the amount of money that I'm making on a monthly basis. If I have $100,000 worth of money in the deal, I would take a loan for another $80,000 on top of that. Okay? And then I would have $180,000, and that $180,000 is what would be making me my money on a monthly basis. All right, and so realistically, within about 4 months, and I mean now we're talking about 105 animals at a time, and within 5 months, my income, not my income, but the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis may start to exceed $70,000-$80,000 a month within 4 months. It might not even take me 8 months. It might not even take me 7 months. It might take me 4 or 5 months to get my net positive monthly take home over $80,000 a month. And it just is what it is. I mean, the whole thing about all this, I legitimately make enough money to where I don't know how, I think some people call it FU money. But I legitimately make FU money. All right. I don't know how else to put it. I legitimately money, I legitimately make such a large excess of money that it is, it's everything. It just is what it is. And here's the thing about, and I've spoken about this. Even if I had nothing, I could redo everything in 30 seconds. All right. If I had no money, I could redo everything. Just because even if I don't have money, I still know how to farm. Right? I still know how to farm. I still know how to do all of this. And this is, money is negligible at the end of the day. But some people call it FU money. And that is legitimately what I'm talking about. Like, even if I had nothing, I could redo everything in 30 seconds. I don't care if you died. Like, if you're watching my channel, every single last one of you, I would hope that every single last one of you, for whatever reason, the algorithm has brought you to my channel. And so maybe that's some kind of whatever, some AI thing. And, maybe there's a reason you're here, and there's a reason, you're on my channel. And, and for whatever reason, the algorithm has brought you to my channel. And I do very well for myself. I make such a large excess of money that it's, I effectively make more money as a cattleman than anybody on the planet makes doing anything. When you take a look at how much money I make, it effectively puts me in like the 0.000000001 percentile. All right. And so for whatever reason, the algorithm has brought you to my channel. Just understand that I sincerely would love, I would sincerely like I would sincerely shake every single one of your hands. If you're watching my channel, if you manage to become successful, I would sincerely shake your hand, and I would sincerely be happy for you. That's the best way for me to put it. You're going to get that from me. I would sincerely be happy for you. I would sincerely be happy for you, and I would gladly shake your hand if you became successful. But if you're going to be poor and you're going to be a moron tard for the rest of your life, I wouldn't touch you with a 50-foot pole. I don't care if you died. All right? I hope you turn yourself around, okay? You know, I hope that you do well for yourself. I would like to see you do well for yourself. And, you know, just at the end of the day, I actually made it. I legitimately make FU money.